Welcome back to Rappahannock Issues. I'm Tom Coen here with Jim Wiggins. We're talking about cyber terrorism, cyber attacks, cyber warfare. We're very happy to be here at the Stafford Regional Airport, and we've talked about the national level and international level. So the individual can be a target as well for this type of terror. And how so?
Yeah, absolutely. So, individuals can be targeted predominantly because certain aspects of the individuals are valuable, like your identity has a certain value or your credit card information has a certain value. I mentioned earlier about how, the internet has become kind of a national asset. Our economy is up there on the internet. We rely upon it today. Think just in your own personal life. When was the last time you used a Polaroid camera, or you used an actual piece of traditional film and you had your photos developed? You don't. Everything is electronic. Everything is digital. And so we now store all of our memories, all of our information in these computer systems. And so it's very feasible that everything that we rely upon can be taken away from us in very short order. And so absolutely, individuals can be targeted, much like organizations. While organizations may have intellectual property, people have identities, they have memories. And again, if people are doing it for vandalism purposes, they might erase your entire online identity. They might compromise your Dropbox account where a lot of your pictures are located and delete it, and they might not think anything of it. So,
and I guess, when we're dealing with national stuff, we're talking about groups that people have sort of heard of, or terrorists, what we think of. What type of entities would try to go in and wipe out an individual's identity that way?
Yeah, so the one case that I've seen it actually done was a bunch of young kids who just did it because they thought it was fun. They weren't really thinking, they didn't have that kind of context of enough experience in the world yet to know that, these memories are one day going to mean something to them. And so they didn't really think much about it and just went ahead and compromised somebody's online account. And they were young, they were teenagers, and they found some weaknesses and some vulnerabilities in the system, and they exploited them, and they decided to wreak some havoc, and they thought it was kind of fun. It's just like when kids go and do graffiti on the walls, in much the same way. They're not necessarily thinking long term about what they're doing and what the impact is to other people. They're just doing it because in the moment it's an enjoyable thing. So that's just one example of why somebody might do that.
And it's sort of interesting. Last night I saw on the news where a teenager is basically suing the FAA because he has a drone and he put a gun on it. And now he has one that has a flamethrower on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's just sort of like, it's sort of the mentality of, I'm a teenager, and it's like, well, why not?
Sure.
Type thing. And you mentioned earlier about malware and how that is being used to sort of get money from people, which is sort of different. It's the old phone type where they would call you up and try to get you to give your credit card number and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And now they're doing it with malware.
Yep.
What can people do to protect themselves against?
So I think that one of the things that people want to really try to do is practice good, what we call cyber hygiene, and that's where you're taking basic steps to protect yourself. It turns out some studies have been published in the last few years that suggest that about 80% of your cyber-related issues can be addressed through things like good password management. So getting yourself a password management so that you're not using that same password at every site.
Right.
Because if a site gets compromised, the last thing you want to have is that password be used on other sites out there. So there are a whole plethora of password managers that are out there. You also want to make sure that your systems are updated, that you keep up to date in terms of the software. That tends to be one of the common vectors that a lot of these malware components use. They'll either target specific software, what we call vulnerabilities or weaknesses. And that's not just the operating system, that's also all the applications that are there. So you want to make sure you're updating your applications. I think another thing that is really important to do is to have a certain kind of skepticism about everybody who reaches out to you, and whether you believe their story, whether it's via email, whether it's via phone. We unfortunately live in a society, well, not unfortunately, but where these trust anchors have been established. And when somebody calls us up and says, hey, I work for the IRS, you just assume that they are who they say they are. And people a lot of times aren't skeptical about that. And so whether it's an email that's coming in and says, hey, please click on this and download this, or please reset your password here, you got to have this kind of inherent skepticism about the communication that's coming at you and whether it's believable. So for example, if someone calls me from a specific phone number and they claim they're from my credit card company, I say, thank you very much. I'll call them back at the 800 number on the back of my card and see if that was a legitimate request. And if it was, I'll deal with it that way. People, unfortunately, don't think like that. They just assume that what's coming to them is in fact legit. So again, practicing good cyber hygiene, password management, and then just being kind of skeptical about the kinds of communication that are coming in and whether you're going to believe them or not.
It's funny when you're saying updating your thing. I was updating one of my systems and one of my, I won't say the name of the company, but
Sure.
this whole thing, and in the middle of it, I got hit by a malware.
Oh, wow.
That just in the middle of the update, and it just totally wiped out everything, including the thumb drive that was sitting in the computer.
Wow.
And so the hygiene aspect is really important.
Absolutely.
So sort of think of that way. Now, corporations, you said, were being attacked as well. Again, that's sort of people, other companies trying to find out secrets, or one of the things I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around is, we keep using the term cyber terrorism or whatnot, but when you really think of the terrorism of a bomb going off or whatnot, it's sort of a different mindset than what's going on with this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, the cyber terrorism traditionally is the example I use with the power grid, trying to shut down, services, shut down capabilities, cause panic, or maybe to deface a website for the purposes of scaring,
Right.
causing, stakeholders and shareholders to basically say, hey, we don't trust that the organization is properly protecting its resources, its identities, and things like that.
So how does the law deal with this if you feel as though you've been attacked or whatnot? Is it any help to you?
Well, one of the challenges we face is that this is multinational. So we start to get into the fact that there are no kind of universal laws across the whole world that deal with this. So what might be considered legal in one country is not necessarily legal or illegal in another, and that poses some interesting challenges. Another area that we run into is the fact that when it comes to breach, what we call breach notification, if an organization has had their systems compromised, there isn't currently a national breach law out there that says that the company has to follow a certain kind of standard process for notifying, hey, if your social security number has been breached, you're going to be notified. Every state pretty much has their own kind of rules and requirements. So that presents an interesting challenge for a lot of corporations that even within our own country work across all these other states. They've got to meet all these different requirements for notification. California might have one set of requirements versus New York. Congress has been tackling this. In the last couple of years, they've passed a lot of meaningful cybersecurity legislation. A lot of it's been at the federal level. The Federal Information Security Management Act was updated at the end of 2014, and so they're continuing to work on it.
Well, and we're going to continue working on this issue. We thank Jim Wiggins for being here today, talking to us about the issues with cyber warfare, cyber terrorism. Remember that October is a really good month. It's the federal government has said it. And a really good thing to do is to come back to see us again on Rappahannock Issues real soon. So thank you for viewing us.